press play. He's the voice of the intersection of marketing, tech, and popular culture. Thinking is his commodity. DJ, data punk, stylish sock collector, and author of the book Disruptive Marketing. Geoffrey Cologne is your host of Disruptive FM, the marketing podcast for eccentric minds.
It's another episode of Disruptive FM, the marketing podcast for eccentric minds. I'm your host, Geoffrey Cologne. It's episode 42, and we're broadcasting live from the city of Vancouver this week. Yes, last episode we came live from Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and now we're all the way on the other side, back on the left coast of North America, and coming to you from Vancouver. Great city, wonderful culture here, a lot of really great things to see and do, and of course now known as Hollywood North, since a lot of post-production and actual filming takes place up here in British Columbia, which has really changed the way the movie industry has operated the past couple of years. So in this week's episode, we're going to talk about how money cannot buy you success. And we're going to actually utilize the current story of How Soccer Explains the World. And of course, if you have never read that book by Franklin Foer, go out and check it out. Even if you don't like the beautiful game, you'll learn a lot from it. Leicester City, probably going to win the premiership, and they barely have a payroll compared to the other titans in the league. How can we use that learning for business? Also, the third wave, how we learn and how we get around and the habits that we can form. What does all this mean in terms of the internet moving forward? As we like to think about, we were in the first wave, or Web 1.0, and then of course we are currently in the second wave, or what we know as Web 2.0. And we're swiftly moving into the third wave, or Web 3.0, and a great book out by Steve Case, who is founder of AOL back in the 90s and really helped popularize the internet. He's got a new book out actually called The Third Wave. And we will also talk about a really interesting thing around how poets and English majors are the new thing in Silicon Valley, and we'll explain why. All that and more, Disruptive FM. If you, of course, want to connect with us on social media, and we're really active there, and we like the feedback and we like the conversation. I am pretty active across a number of channels. So obviously go to my website and I'll spell it out for you, just because I think a lot of people might spell it the other way. And of course, I spell it with the British phonetic spelling. It's geoffreycologne.net, or you can go to .com or .org since I secured all those, but it's GeoffreyColone.net. And you can see a whole list of all the different properties that I am active on. Twitter, my main channel of communication, but also active on SoundCloud, Instagram, LinkedIn, Tumblr, Medium, YouTube. Of course, you can find the podcast on iTunes, and I'm also on Snapchat. So, obviously connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can follow me there. Geoffrey Cologne, Geoffrey, last name Colon. Of course, you can find me at Facebook/DJGeoffe. You can also find me on Twitter, Twitter/DJGeoffe. And Instagram/DJGeoffe. I was a DJ at one time, so a lot of people are always asking, hey, how come you how come you have DJ Jeffy across all these social media sites? Well, because when I got started on a lot of the platforms back in the early to mid 2000s, depending on when they launched, I used my DJ name as a vanity URL to secure, because I was still an active DJ at the time and was looking at utilizing the networks really to help network with other DJs and promoters and audience and find gigs, etc. And it just sort of stuck with me, and I don't think that's ever really going to go away, because that's something that's a big part of my life, and will continue to be a big part of my life. So you can find me pretty much everywhere across the web. Also, if you do a Google or a Bing search and you just put my name in, there will probably be a number of things that pop up, and you can find me there. So make sure you connect with me. I'm actually giving a discussion at some of my events this year. And if you go to my website and you go to /speaking, well, note where I'm talking in the year 2016. And I'm actually giving a presentation June 3rd in New York City at the Wyndham New Yorker Hotel at Social Media Strategy Summit, all about the nomadic strategy. And this is actually starting to pick up a little bit more seriousness amongst marketers. It is a holistic way of looking at the world. And the reason that I am presenting this is because for many years, we looked at owning everything on the web as your main calibration. Hey, I'm going to own a website. We're going to enable it with analytics, and we're going to be able to find out who's visiting and maybe how that's converting to a particular objective. What I'm now seeing is that is less of the strategy amongst many organizations, because information is delivered on platforms. We don't go to websites as much as we used to. We may go to certain websites, obviously, to participate in the commerce activity, but we also have apps that are available. And of course, we're moving into a world where ultimately much of that activity might be able to be replicated based on what our current practices are. It could build predictive information, so we don't even have to go back in and order anything. It'll sort of know when we're due for something. We see a lot of this, obviously, on Amazon and other recurrent types of e-commerce sites where you have to order things every couple of weeks to replenish the supply based on your past behavior. But the nomadic strategy is actually playing into the fact that we need to be where people are, and people are in a variety of places. We can't just pull them into where we live. So to say, hey, I have a house and I want you to come to my house, or I have a business, I want you to come to my business, is not always the best way to get everyone to activate. Sometimes you have to go into areas where people are, infiltrate those areas, figure out what they are talking about, and then insert yourself into those conversations so you can basically talk on their terms, not your terms. And we're seeing more and more of this in business. And actually, this is not new at all. This has actually been integrated into, I think, our culture going back to the early adoption of social media platforms. But like anything, it takes like 10 years for human behavior sometimes to catch up to the technological adaptations, or I should say adaptations. And we're seeing that more and more. So great company, and I'll give them a plug, John Steinberg. He's the founder and CEO of Cheddar. Everyone should check out Cheddar TV. John was at BuzzFeed early on, and then he went to the Daily Mail, which is a UK company. And now he's started his own media company. And I love Cheddar, and I'll tell you why. And this ties into the nomadic strategy that I'm talking about. He doesn't have a website. He uses Medium for his website. He uses Vimeo to showcase his video content. And they use Facebook Live video to shoot the show in real time. And then, of course, they have access to that MOV file and can circulate it anywhere. Ultimately, his main goal is to be distributed into over-the-top services, which go direct into your device, usually a large screen TV, though it could go into your laptop or your tablet, depending on how you're connected to the web. I really love this strategy. I think there's going to be a lot of really interesting things from it. And I also think this ties into the fact that we are owning things less. We don't want to own houses as much because we move around quite a bit. We don't own cars as much in urban areas because we have services that can take us different places. And we don't obviously own mass transit. We sort of rent that out to get around in larger cities and fund that through a variety of different means. It'll be really interesting. Would love to see everyone at a number of these events that I'm going to be presenting this at this year. I'll be talking about it at the M2C conference in Hamburg, Germany, May 9th, at the Chief Marketing Officer Summit, May 25th here in Seattle. Also, Social Media Strategy Summit, as I noted, June 3rd at the Wyndham New Yorker Hotel in New York. Digital Summit Denver, June 15th in Denver, Colorado. Some other places I'll be speaking but won't be presenting: the Digital Nomadic Strategy. I'll be talking June 20th here in Seattle at Social Pro. That's at the Bell Harbor International Conference Center. I'm going to be at Insight Corporate Social Media Summit, the New York Marriott at the Brooklyn Bridge, late June 21st. In July, I'm in Portland at Digital Summit Portland, also in Minneapolis at Digital Summit Minneapolis. And in August, I'm back in Philadelphia on the East Coast, August 15th, Digital Summit Philly. I'm also trying to find out if I'm there around the same time that there's this music convention in Atlantic City. Got to talk to my sort of some of my old cohorts and acquaintances from the music industry, where I spent a lot of time early in my career, to find out when this particular event is. I might be talking at a music event actually in August in Atlantic City, which would be a lot of fun. Really different from some of the other things that I'm doing. And then I'm also talking about something I can't disclose at the moment that might be going on regularly in Las Vegas, which is, I think, going to change the way that we approach the creative side of business. There's tons of marketing conferences out there. There's tons of marketing endeavors out there, but I really think that what we have in mind for this sort of new program, it's almost like an ongoing program that combines meeting people in person and meeting people virtually, working with a partner on this right now, might be really massive. So exciting stuff. So again, not to plug the website, but if you have been a listener to the podcast for a really long time, definitely head over to the site, check out what I'm up to. And of course, all this is leading up to the release of my first book in August, Disruptive Marketing: What Growth Hackers, Data Punks, and Other Hybrid Thinkers Can Teach Us About Navigating the New Normal. That's out August 15th on Amazon Books hardcover, July 15th on Kindle. And I'm also going to be reading the audiobook, which will be out around the same time as the hardcover book. So money cannot buy you success anymore. Great tale going on in the Premier League this year. Anyone of my listeners is a footy fan or a football fan, soccer fan, we're really seeing something that can be applied heavily to business happening in sports. And this is why I think we pay attention to sports, because we can relate to sports in a way that it reflects life. We are seeing more and more the fact that smaller teams on shoestring budgets are starting to dominate these leagues. Now, why is that? Personally, I think a lot of that is due to the fact that they are committed to a team-first DNA. So instead of putting a lot of emphasis on we're going to have the highest paid player, their emphasis is we're going to have a team that's going to perform at a high level. And where business, I think, can learn from a lot of this is many companies have really looked at how do we bring in the sort of top dog, so to speak, to come into our organization and change it from the ground up. And I find that to be an antiquated model now. And I think a lot of things we can learn from what Leicester City's doing, where they're basically spending practically nothing, but have this wonderful team culture and they have a great spirit, and they just have this never-ending fight in them is wonderful to see. And the other thing I think that's also interesting is this was a team that was terrible. This team was at the bottom. So if we think back to like the movie Major League, which had of course the tale of the terrible Cleveland Indians going from like worst to first. This is a real life tale that obviously was fiction, but this is a real life tale that's coming true. You know, you had a team that was basically at the bottom last season that's now at the top and probably going to win the league, because statistically they have enough points. Probably if even they lose the rest of their games, they're going to have a hard time still being pulled out of first place. But I think it's really fabulous to see that this is not due to signing the top talent in the world. That this is also because the gap between cash-rich clubs and cash-poor clubs is narrowing. And the business analogy, of course, because we are a podcast that talks a lot about the disruptive sort of world around us, is that in the world of marketing, and especially business, you could be a small business and really have all the tools that larger businesses use because you have access to data, which levels the playing field. So I think what we're going to see more of moving forward is the business world mimicking the sports world, where you don't go after a lot of very expensive executives and say, hey, turn this around for us. You know, how we watched Yahoo ask Marissa Mayer for a very large salary, hey, turn this around, and she didn't turn it around, or was not able to turn it around. And no diss on her, I'm a big fan of hers, but there was a lot of systemic issues there. But, you know, they pay this person quite a bit to turn these things around, and they're not able to do it. I think what you may see more of now is, hey, we're going to actually try to culminate the best team. And of course, that means hiring good people to put those teams together. So this is not, you know, cheap by any means for some organizations. But I also think you're going to have some organizations or companies from the ground up just get started, and they're able to topple others, like Leicester City is able to topple Chelsea and Manchester City and Arsenal, because they have the right team chemistry. They know what their mission is. They know what they're after. And they have the fight in them. They also have access to alternative training schemes. There's word that Leicester City has a pretty interesting training scheme that other clubs don't use. And in the business world, that's the access to data. But not just the access to data. It's how some of these smaller businesses use that data. And that's really going to separate the winners and the losers moving forward. And that means that you're going to have many corporations that may have billions of dollars not necessarily staying on top in a lot of these areas, because smaller players that are very team focused, I think, are going to be able to carve away, even if it's a small amount, carve away and make a nice business case for a sustaining business around a particular line of business. And we're definitely seeing this more and more in the marketing world. Marketing really becoming more of a revenue generator because they have smart, creative teams that use the data in ways that other big companies are not utilizing. So, a good tale for all of us to learn from. Always good to look at other worlds, in this case, the world of sports and soccer, to help educate us, allow us to learn about how we can apply this in our world of business, our world of marketing. The Third Wave, interesting book out by Steve Case, who was an AOL co-founder, and who's basically saying that technology is finally coming to highly regulated industries And it's going to move beyond the tech bubble, or I should not say bubble, but the tech domain, the tech ecosystem. It's going to start to infiltrate a lot of other areas. And we're going to see a lot of rapid change as a result of this. The pace of innovation, the pace of disruption over the last 10 or 20 years, the things that you can do now that you couldn't dream about even 10 years ago, is fascinating. The things that I'm able to do right now on my handset is fascinating. The things you'll be able to do in 5 years with virtual reality is fascinating. The things that you'll be able to do in 10 years with artificial intelligence is fascinating. Of course, there's lots of discussions around the repercussions of this technology explosion, and we'll save that for another episode. But when you're looking at some of the industries that are the most important in terms of our lives, they haven't really changed very much in hundreds of years. So we're really at the beginning of a whole new era here, because you have the medical industry, the health industry. It's pretty much operating the same it has for the last 50 years. Advertising, I think, is still operating a lot like it has the last 50 years. Yes, I know a lot of people are going to say, you're crazy, Geoff. There's tons of ad tech out there, and it's changed how we reach audience and targeting and retargeting and remarketing. Yeah, but you know what? At the end of the day, look what people still engage with. Moving images, video, which goes back to television ads. We haven't moved that rapidly away from specific types of content. Maybe the mediums and the platforms have changed, but I think a lot of how we still devise messaging is still very similar to how we've done it for the last couple of decades. If we look at a lot of other areas of industry, supply chain management is still pretty similar to how it's operated. I think some e-commerce companies are trying to change that. If we look at a number of other areas, most of those industries are still operating pretty much like they have since either the end of the 19th century or for much of the 20th century. And where we're moving is going to be awesome, and it's going to be really inspiring and innovative in terms of how this third wave is going to change the world that we live in. And so what Steve Case really gets to at the heart of this book is he talks about how that third wave is going to integrate the internet more seamlessly and pervasively into every aspect of our life. This is what we like to call the post-digital world. I know a lot of people think that's a buzzword, but I've been using that word for quite some time. I wrote a blog piece in 2013 that talked about it. I have a chapter in my book that's about it. And I'm not using that as a buzzword as much as the fact that you are moving toward a world where digital will be everywhere, so you don't really pay as much attention to it. Now when we see things in a digital ecosystem, or I should say, when we see digital things in our lives, we get excited because it's rapidly different from how we've lived. But at a point, you're going to be so comfortable with technology that it will be like the wallpaper in your bathroom. It'll set a mood, and you won't even know it's there. And that's the best type of technology because it's immersive, but it allows you to, it helps you to do things so you can live a better life. And ultimately, isn't that really what we should be using technology to do? I think sometimes we get sidetracked in why we create technology. We get sidetracked because we have a tendency of thinking, well, we create technology to get rich. That's a very small sector of the world and a very narrow way of looking at why you should be creating technology, why we should be using technology. So while software continues to be important, one of the things Case talks about is it's not just about software anymore. And this is radically different from how the world has operated for the past 30 years, because it really was always about software. Now it's really going to be about partnership. And partnership comes in many ways. We create it through collaborative trust. That's usually happens through people talking with other people and figuring out the best ways to work together. This also can happen at scale using application programming interfaces. So you're going to have a lot of people talking about, hey, how do we use APIs to actually scale our technology off the back of your technology? Partnerships are going to be the sole focus in the next 20 years. And this is why you never want to burn bridges with others. And ultimately, you want to be as collaborative as possible, because you never know when you're going to have to make a partnership with others for your own survival. So it's going to be fascinating to see how these partnerships happen. And I think we're going to see a lot of this in some industries where, yes, applications and services exist, but how you partner with people that make up these different networks are going to be key to the future of business success. And we're going to see this heavily in marketing, because marketing isn't going to be so much about, hey, let's market something to our customers. Marketing is really going to be about, hey, how do we collaborate and partner with our customers to create future products and services? So that's going to be a huge deal, and something that Case talks quite a bit about in the book. Poets are the new thing in Silicon Valley, and this should really come as no surprise. A couple of years ago, designers were all the rage in the world of tech. I think it's because we are, again, starting to realize that software developers, while the key quotient in the tech industry, are not the sole quotient anymore in terms of making things happen. So, of course, why poets? Why English majors? Why those who have more of a creative writing background? Well, if we think of where the world of technology is going, it's really moving at a fast throttle toward a world that is going to talk to you more. Yes, one that you speak and one that actually speaks back to you. We've seen this, of course, in a variety of different technologies, such as Cortana, Siri, Google Now. But it's not even new in those areas. Of course, your GPS talked to you for a long time. When you would put in instructions on where you wanted to go, it would verbalize and tell you where to go. Of course, the interesting thing about GPS systems is they sound so inhuman. And I think what the world of tech is realizing as we move more into the world of artificial intelligence and operating systems able to talk back to us is we want someone that actually, or something, I should say, not someone. No, this is not the movie Her. We want our technology to have more of a human edge to it, so it doesn't feel like it's just doing the job for us, but it is our partner in helping us navigate a more confusing world. So the Washington Post wrote this article about the fact that poets and creative writers were this new area to tech. But I almost wanted to remind that writer and a lot of other tech journalists out there that the tech space has always been open to a variety of fields. I think one of the things we've seen more in the past couple of years is that the liberal arts major has done very well in the world of technology. I think especially marketing technology, because if you can give marketing technology more of a human edge, more of a creative edge, you are a leg up on the 3,874 solutions that are out there in the field of marketing tech. And the reason I say that is because so many of those solutions are bland They are boring. They are cold. They are analytically driven. And we really, I think, are looking for more of a world that our software doesn't work like a cold spreadsheet. Because if you think about it, spreadsheets are boring. They're supposed to be cold. It's a bunch of numbers. It's helping you crunch things together. We don't all learn or retain information when that information is served up to us cold. Using the analogy of a restaurant, if I'm in a restaurant and the chef comes out and says, "Hey, I got your meal for you," and he puts it on the table in front of you and you go to eat it and you're like, "This is cold. What kind of experience is this?" It leaves you desiring for a lot more. So those who realize they can make things a little bit more warmer, I think there is a lot that they have to gain in this area. So it'll be interesting to see how these left of center disciplines will add more humanity to the sometimes cold world of tech. And it's fascinating because I thought that Steve Jobs helped warm up the world of tech, because I think he understood human experience a little more than some of the others who are in the field. And we even see this now from a lot of the big players that are out there. And I think that's one of the reasons why, if you truly can be more of a 50-50 analytical creative hybrid, it does give you an advantage in this new world, because you are able to process information from an analytical standpoint, but creatively deliver or transform that information in a way that it has more of a human touch to it. So something definitely to watch. Hope you enjoyed this episode. A lot of really interesting topics that we touched on. Again, check out my website, geoffreycolon.net, Geoffreycolon.net, and my upcoming book, Disruptive Marketing, What Growth Hackers, Data Punks, and Other Hybrid Thinkers Can Teach Us About Navigating the New Normal. Out in 4 months, if you're listening to this podcast in April when I recorded it, but out in 4 months in August on Amacom Books. You can check out all of their roster of books at amacombooks.org. That's AMACOM books.org.
You've been listening to an episode of Disruptive FM, the marketing podcast for eccentric minds. Remember to subscribe to the show on iTunes. Purchase a copy of Geoffrey's latest book, Disruptive Marketing, on Kindle, hardcover and audio. Signing off from the city of Seattle. Press pause.